In the vast reaches of the galaxy, many species had fleets that could strike with the speed of light. Their warships moved with elegance and power, leaving enemies no chance to defend themselves. The Zelgar Alliance was one of these powerful fleets. Known for their advanced technology, the Zelgar fleet had earned the respect of every species in the galaxy. They were quick, efficient, and always seemed to be one step ahead. Then there was the Artemis. It was a human warship, old and slow, often seen as nothing more than a relic of a bygone era. The Artemis was not built for speed. It had a large frame and thick armor, designed to take punishment rather than avoid it. Its weapons, though powerful, lacked the advanced targeting systems of newer ships. Its crew often joked that they were more likely to win a race against a turtle than defeat any enemy fleet. But for Captain Ella Carter, the Artemis was more than just an old ship. It was home. The ship's crew, though small, were a tight-knit family. Every person on board had chosen to be there, not because they thought they'd win battles with speed or flashy tech, but because they believed in the ship's resilience. They had trained long and hard to make sure that no matter what happened, they could face any challenge. One day, the Artemis was assigned to a routine patrol in a quiet sector of space. No one expected much, certainly not a battle. It was just another patrol to check on the peaceful colonies scattered in the area. But in the depths of space, danger could always strike without warning. The Zelgar fleet, meanwhile, had been tasked with guarding the same sector. Unlike the Artemis, their ships were sleek, fast, and designed for quick strikes. The Zelgar commanders often mocked humanity's warships, calling them slow and outdated. They were convinced that the Artemis and ships like it would be no match. For the advanced Zelgar technology, as the Zelgar ships gathered in the sector, their commanders couldn't help but laugh at the Artemis as it arrived. Their ships could easily outmaneuver the slow, lumbering human warship. The Artemis's movements were clumsy in comparison. It wasn't built for speed, and the Zelgar commanders knew it. They didn't see the Artemis as a threat. "Look at them," said Captain Tyler, a young, overconfident Zelgar officer, as he watched the Artemis approach. "A junkyard ship? What are they doing here? They'll be a laughingstock in no time." Ella Carter could hear the remarks over the open communications channel, but she didn't let it bother her. She had heard it all before. Humans were often seen as the underdogs, and the Artemis was no different. But Captain Carter wasn't going to be distracted by the mockery. She had one job: to patrol the sector and keep things safe. She trusted her crew, and she trusted her ship. "Stay sharp, everyone," Captain Carter ordered over the intercom. "We don't know what we're up against. Just keep to our plan." The Artemis moved slowly through the sector, its engines humming steadily. It wasn't quick, but it was reliable. The crew went about their tasks, checking their equipment and keeping a watchful eye on the stars. Ella walked the bridge, observing her crew with a calm, focused expression. Despite the mockery from the Zelgar fleet, she knew something they didn't. Strength didn't always come from speed. Sometimes it came from knowing your ship inside and out, and being able to use it to its fullest potential. The Zelgar fleet, in contrast, was already getting ready to leave for more important duties. The commanders couldn't understand why. Humans bothered with such old ships when the galaxy had so much more advanced technology to offer. In their minds, the Artemis was nothing more than a waste of time. They couldn't even imagine that it would be more than just a slow-moving target. Suddenly, an alert blared from the communications system. The Zelgar fleet had spotted something: a massive alien swarm moving towards the sector at an incredible speed. The alien ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were fast, aggressive, and seemingly endless in number. The Zelgar fleet immediately moved into formation, preparing for battle. They engaged the swarm with all their might, confident that their speed and technology would easily overwhelm the enemy. The Artemis, however, was still far from the action. Captain Carter was hesitant, unsure of the true scale of the threat. But she wasn't going to make a decision until she had all the information. "We'll stay in position for now," Captain Carter ordered. "Let's observe and wait for the Zelgar to make their move." It wasn't long before the Zelgar fleet was in full combat, firing laser beams and missiles at the alien ships. The Artemis watched from a distance, It was slow, but it was still there, observing every move made by the Zelgar fleet. As the battle raged on, Captain Carter couldn't help but think that something wasn't right. Aliens were relentless. Even the Zelgar fleet was having trouble keeping up with the pace of the swarm. "Stay alert, everyone," Ella said, her voice serious now. "This isn't over yet." Unbeknownst to the Zelgar fleet, the true test of the Artemis was about to begin. A slow human warship, once laughed at and dismissed, was about to show the galaxy that sometimes the tortoise wins the race. The battle between the Zelgar fleet and the alien swarm intensified with every passing minute. The Zelgar ships, agile and quick, darted in and out of the swarm, firing their weapons with deadly accuracy. At first it seemed like the Zelgar fleet had everything under control. They were fast, and their advanced technology was powerful, or so they thought. But the alien ships were relentless. They didn't retreat, and their numbers seemed endless. No matter how many Zelgar ships were destroyed, more seemed to take their place. Captain Ella Carter watched from the Artemis, still several miles away. From the battle, her eyes scanning the chaotic scene unfolding before her, her hands gripped the armrests of her chair, her mind racing. The Zelgar fleet was struggling, but they were too proud to call for help. They were too confident in their technology, thinking that speed and firepower were all that mattered. They didn't realize was that their strength was also their weakness. The alien ships weren't just fast. They were everywhere. They swarmed in waves, moving as one, with no hesitation or fear. The Zelgar fleet couldn't predict their movements, and the alien swarm seemed to adapt to every attack the Zelgar made. The Zelgar commanders, once confident, were now growing. Frustrated, on the Artemis, Captain Carter made a quick decision. She knew her ship was slow, but it wasn't without its advantages. The Artemis had been designed to take punishment and keep going. It had heavy armor and strong shields. Perfect. For long battles where endurance mattered more than speed, the ship's weapons might not have been as advanced as the Zelgar's, but they were reliable. And right now, that was what mattered most. "Prepare for battle," Captain Carter ordered. "We may be slow, but we're not helpless.
Ow.
Get in position and do what we can." The crew of the Artemis jumped into action. The ship moved steadily, not in a rush, but with purpose. It wasn't quick, but it was moving in the right direction. Ella had ordered the crew to focus on the alien ship's weak points, looking for any chance to strike. As they closed in on the battle, the Artemis's sensors picked up more alien ships on the horizon. The Zelgar fleet was clearly in trouble now. Their ships had suffered damage, and their formations were falling apart. Some ships were retreating, while others were fighting a losing battle. It wasn't enough to turn the tide. The alien swarm had broken through their defenses, and the Zelgar fleet was in disarray. The Zelgar commanders realized they had underestimated the enemy and now, it was too late. We can't hold them off much longer. One of the Zelgar officers shouted over the comms. Captain Tyler, who had mocked the Artemis earlier, was now watching his fleet struggle. He cursed under his breath as his ships were picked off one by one. He hadn't expected this. He had expected a quick, clean victory, not a drawn-out fight where his fleet was being destroyed. The alien swarm wasn't just a force of nature. It was a deadly, relentless tide that didn't stop. The Zelgar fleet was on the brink of collapse. Back on the Artemis, Captain Carter knew this was their chance. The Artemis wasn't fast, but it was strong. It could take hits, and it could keep going. The ship's crew had trained for situations like this. They knew that sometimes the key to winning wasn't about speed or technology. It was about patience. Artemis had that. "In spades? We're going to help them," Captain Carter said, her voice steady and confident. "We'll get in close and take out their command ships. If we can disrupt their control, we can break the swarm." Her plan was risky, but it was the only chance they had. The Artemis slowly moved forward, avoiding the chaos of the main battle. The ship's targeting systems locked onto the alien command ships. These ships were the heart of the swarm's coordination. If the Artemis could destroy them, it might be enough to stop the swarm. As they neared the command ships, the Artemis came under fire from the alien ships. But the ship's thick armor held strong. The crew braced themselves as the ship rocked from the blasts, but they kept going. There was no turning back now. Focus fire on the lead command ship, Captain Carter ordered. Target its engines. If we can take it out, we can scatter the rest of the swarm. The crew followed orders with precision, firing their weapons at the alien command ship. The Artemis's weapons were old but powerful, and they hit their mark. The alien ship's engines exploded in a burst of fire, and the swarm seemed to hesitate, momentarily losing its coordination. It was a small victory, but it was enough. The alien ships began to break apart. Losing their formation as they scrambled to recover, Captain Carter watched as the Artemis continued its attack, taking down more of the alien ships. The Zelgar fleet, now realizing that the Artemis had something, they didn't patience and strategy rallied and rejoined the battle. The combined force of the Artemis and the remaining Zelgar ships began to turn the tide. But the alien swarm wasn't giving up. The battle was far from over, and both sides knew it. The Artemis might be slow, but it had proven that it wasn't to be underestimated. And now, with the battle shifting in their favor, Captain Carter knew they had a real chance to win. As the battle raged on, the alien swarm's numbers began to dwindle, but they weren't done yet. They fought back with a ferocity that made even the seasoned Zelgar commanders nervous. The alien ships were relentless, and the Artemis slow. Pace was still a disadvantage when it came to keeping up with the battle's speed. But Captain Ella Carter had a different perspective. She knew the Artemis's strength didn't lie in speed. It was in its ability to take damage, recover, and keep going. This was their advantage, something the alien swarm and the Zelgar fleet didn't have. The Artemis moved steadily through the chaos, its crew working together with incredible focus. They didn't rush. They didn't panic. They fired at the alien ships with precision, slowly but surely, taking out the most dangerous ones. Every shot counted. The crew knew that the more ships they destroyed, the harder it would be for the aliens to stay coordinated. Captain Carter stood on the bridge, watching as the ship's sensors locked onto another alien command vessel. This one was even larger than the last, its weapons powerful enough to tear through a fleet. It was critical to stop this ship before it could cause any more damage to the Artemis or the Zelgar fleet. She turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Marco, who was already working on a plan to disable the alien ship. Target its weapon systems, Ella ordered. Can't afford to take any more hits. Take them out, then focus on the engines. Understood. Captain Marco replied, his fingers flying over the controls. Engaging now. The Artemis fired its weapons, the blasts hitting the alien ship's weapons array. The alien vessel retaliated, its massive guns firing back. But the Artemis was already moving, its thick armor taking the brunt of the hits. The ship's shields held strong, absorbing the damage and keeping the crew safe. The crew on the Artemis could feel the ship rock with each blast, but they stayed calm. They had trained for this, and they knew what to do. As the Artemis continued to engage the alien ship, its weapons fired again, this time hitting the target with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ship's weapon systems exploded in a bright flash of light, disabling the ship's ability to fight back. The Artemis quickly moved in closer, targeting the alien ship's engines. "We've got this," Ella muttered to herself. She had seen the Artemis take damage before, but this time it was different. This time they weren't running away. This time they were fighting back with everything they had. The Artemis fired once more, and the alien ship's engines ignited. In a violent explosion, the ship was crippled, and the swarm lost its coordination. The alien vessels no longer followed orders. They were scattered and disorganized, vulnerable to attack. Target all remaining command ships. Captain Carter ordered, "Let's finish this." The Artemis's weapons locked onto the next alien target, and the crew worked as a unit to dismantle the swarm. It wasn't fast, but it was steady. Every shot counted, and the ship's older technology was proving more effective than anyone had predicted. The Zelgar fleet, now realizing the Artemis had played a major role in turning the tide, began to regroup. "Captain, we're ready to support," Captain Tyler of the Zelgar fleet called over the comms. His tone had changed since the beginning of the battle. Smugness was gone, replaced by respect. "Good to hear, Captain," Ella replied. "Let's finish this together." The Zelgar fleet, once mocking the slow Artemis, now followed its lead. They had seen the value in the Artemis's strategies, slow, deliberate, and calculated. Together, they struck the remaining alien ships, taking them down one by one. The battle wasn't over, but the worst of it was behind them. The alien swarm was falling apart. The remaining alien ships were no longer coordinated, and the Artemis had shown the galaxy just how powerful a slow, steady approach could be. Captain Carter stood on the bridge watching as the final alien ships were destroyed, the crew letting out a cheer of victory. The Artemis had done it. They had proven that speed wasn't everything in battle. Patience, strategy, and resilience were just as important, if not more so. The Zelgar fleet, though still recovering from the battle, now acknowledged the Artemis for its crucial role in saving the sector. They had underestimated humanity's warship, but now they saw it for what it truly was, a force that should never be taken lightly. As the final alien ship exploded in a burst of light, Captain Carter allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy would never look at the Artemis the same way again. It wasn't just a slow, outdated warship. It was a symbol of human strength and example of what could be achieved when you didn't give up, no matter the odds. The battle seemed to stretch on for hours, but the Artemis was still going strong. Captain Ella Carter stood at the bridge, watching as the remaining alien ships scattered in disarray. The crew had done what many thought impossible. Against all odds, the slow old Artemis had proven itself to be a force to be reckoned with. The Zelgar fleet, still recovering from their earlier mistakes, was now in a better position. Thanks to the Artemis's unwavering persistence, Captain Lieutenant Marco called out from the sensor station, "We've got more incoming. Looks like a new wave of alien ships." Ella sighed, but didn't feel the panic that might have come in a different situation. The Artemis wasn't fast, but it was reliable. The ship had been battered and bruised in the earlier parts of the battle, but it had kept going. Crew prepared for the next wave. She knew the ship could handle whatever came next. It had already proven itself in ways that no one could have predicted. "Set us on a course to intercept," Captain Carter ordered. "Let's make sure this ends today." No? The Artemis shifted slowly but deliberately into position, its heavy engines grinding to life. Its weapons systems powered up, and the crew braced for another fight. The incoming alien ships weren't as numerous as before, but they were faster and more coordinated. The battle wasn't over yet, and Captain Carter knew that the final victory would come down to how well they could hold their ground. The alien ships approached rapidly, but their movements were less organized than before. Without their command ships in control, the alien fleet was a shadow of what it had been. Their communication was scrambled, their formations scattered. It was a perfect opportunity for the Artemis to strike. "Focus on the smaller ships first," Ella said. "We can't let them regroup. Take out their scouts and then focus on the larger vessels." The Artemis's weapons fired with precision, the slow but powerful blasts hitting their targets with deadly accuracy. The alien ships attempted to dodge, but they couldn't move fast enough. The Artemis might not have been able to outpace its enemies, but its steady, deliberate shots were proving to be far more effective than anyone had expected. The alien ships, once so confident in their speed, were now struggling to survive against the Artemis's overwhelming firepower. The Zelgar fleet, still recovering from their earlier losses, began to regroup and support the Artemis as it took. Down one alien ship after another, they no longer saw the Artemis as a weak, outdated vessel. It was a vital Aliwan that had the strength, and resolved to stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds. "We're making progress." Captain Tyler of the Zelgar fleet called over the comms. "The aliens are retreating. Keep up the pressure." Nodded, her focus never wavering from the battle. The Artemis was a ship like no other. It didn't need to be fast, it just needed to be relentless. And that was something humanity had in spades. As the last of the smaller alien ships were destroyed, the larger ships began to break apart. Their shields were failing, and their weapons were no match for the Artemis's concentrated fire. The alien fleet, once so powerful and menacing, was now retreating in disarray. The battle had turned. The humans had won. "Target the remaining command ship," Captain Carter ordered. "Let's finish this." The Artemis aimed its weapons at the final alien command vessel. This was the last piece of the puzzle. Without it, the remaining alien ships would be aimless, easy prey. The Artemis fired again, its weapons blasting through the alien ship's defenses. A bright explosion lit up the space around them, signaling the end of the battle. The alien swarm was gone. The Zelgar fleet, now thoroughly impressed, hailed the Artemis and its crew with respect. "Captain Carter," Captain Tyler said, his voice a mix of awe and respect, "we owe you. You turned the tide of this battle. We've never seen anything like it." Ella's expression remained calm, but inside, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had known from the start that the Artemis wasn't a ship to be underestimated. Its strength came not from speed or flashy technology, but from its crew's ability to work together and face adversity with patience. "Thank you, Captain," Ella replied, "but we're not done yet. Let's make sure the sector is safe before we head back." The last of the alien ships gone, the crew of the Artemis began the process of surveying the area for any remaining threats. The Zelgar fleet, having witnessed firsthand the power of the slow, steady warship, offered to assist in the cleanup. It was clear now that the Artemis had earned its place among the stars. The galaxy would never again laugh at humanity's warships. They had proven that, when it mattered most, the slow ship could still win the day. The Artemis was more than just a relic of the past. It was a symbol of humanity's strength, strength built on resilience, strategy, and determination. As Captain Carter looked out at the vast expanse of space before her, she knew one thing for certain. No one would ever look down on the Artemis again. The Artemis drifted slowly through the debris of the battlefield, its engines humming softly as the crew began to assess the damage. The once mighty alien swarm had been driven off, and the Zelgar fleet, though battered, was still intact. It had been a long, grueling fight, but the Artemis and its crew had proven their worth in ways no one could have predicted. Captain Ella Carter stood on the bridge, watching the stars outside. The fight was over, but the weight of what had just happened was still heavy on her mind. The Artemis had not only survived, but had become the deciding factor in the battle. The slow human warship that had once been mocked was now a legend. The Zelgar fleet's commander, Captain Tyler, called over the comms, his voice full of admiration. "Captain Carter, I need to say a tour ship did what we thought was impossible, and we couldn't have one without you." Ella smiled slightly, but there was no arrogance in her expression. She had known from the start that the Artemis could do it. It wasn't about speed or advanced technology. It was about doing what you had to do and never giving up, no matter the odds. "Thank you, Captain Tyler," she replied. But it was a team effort. The Artemis wouldn't be here without its crew. The crew of the Artemis had worked together flawlessly. Despite their ship's age and slow pace, they had moved as one, executing each move with precision. There'd be no panic, no hesitation, just pure teamwork. Ella knew that was the true strength of the Artemis, its people. They trusted each other, and that trust had carried them through the worst battle they had ever faced. The bridge crew was already busy with repairs and recovery. The Artemis had taken some damage, but it was nothing the crew couldn't handle. They had been through worse. Slowly, the ship began to regain its full strength, ready for the next challenge. The Artemis might not be the fastest ship in the galaxy, but it was the most reliable. Captain Lieutenant Marcos said, looking up from his station, "We've received a message from the Galactic Council requesting a report on the battle." Ella nodded, her mind already shifting into professional mode. The Council had been watching the battle closely, no doubt impressed by the Artemis's role in the victory. They would want to know everything, the tactics, the strategy, and how the slow, outdated ship had turned the tide. Ella was ready to give them an honest answer. "Send them the report," she said. "Make sure they know what happened here."
Hey.
Marco prepared the message. Ella turned her attention to the view ahead. The alien swarm was gone, but the battle had left a mark on the sector. The Artemis had fought not just for survival, but for something greater, a chance to prove that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Zelgar fleet, having completed their own repairs, sent another message. This time, it was a more personal one. "Captain Carter," Captain Tyler said, his tone serious. "I know we've had our differences in the past, but I want you to know something. I have nothing but respect for you and your crew now. You've shown us that the human spirit is something we cannot ignore. The Artemis may be slow, but it's stronger than anything we've ever faced." Ella's eyes softened as she listened. It was rare to hear such words from a Zelgar commander, especially one who had once mocked humanity's warships. But now Tyler understood. The Artemis wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of determination, of fighting through adversity, and of never backing down. "Thank you," Captain Ella replied. "We couldn't have done it without you and your fleet's help. This was a joint victory." The Artemis's crew had earned the respect of the galaxy's most powerful fleets. No longer were they the underdogs. No longer were they mocked for their slow ships. The battle had proved that even the most unlikely of heroes could rise to the challenge. The Artemis had shown that sometimes strength wasn't about speed or advanced technology. It was about doing what had to be done, no matter how long it took. As the Artemis continued its journey back to the homeworld, Captain Carter stood tall on the bridge, looking out into the stars. She knew that this victory was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had only just begun to prove its place within it. The Artemis had made its mark, and the galaxy would remember it. The crew had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes it's not about being the fastest or the most advanced, it's about having the courage to face the impossible and come out on top. The Artemis had done just that, and Ella Carter couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for her ship, her crew, and the future that awaited them. The Artemis wasn't just another warship, it was a symbol of humanity's strength, one that no one could ignore, no matter how slow it might have seemed.